Hi, folks. We're Tacitus today. Tacitus today, your pushback channel, and thank you for joining this audio live stream. In this essay, I'd like to talk about the issue of how violence in the sense of punch-ups, beatings, and fist fights, those sorts of things, how they've morphed into what were the causation factors 50 years ago to what they might be today, and what role does the state play today as opposed to decades ago, and how have attitudes and views changed. One of the things that I'm not talking about schoolyard stuff. If you looking at me, what did you say to me? All that sort of stuff, which actually still goes on, but to a much reduced extent. As you get older, it sort of happens less, or the the hoodlum kids at school that would try and steal your lunch money or your bus fares or something like that. That group, by the way, at one school, it was overwhelmingly the Arabic kids that were doing that. The brown kids, the others, little bit of Irish stuff, but the white kids just didn't seem to do it or be interested in doing it or want to do it. But the others were right into that, and it used to sort of surprise me because I hadn't seen it before. Then going to an all-white school where the idea of stealing someone's lunch money or their bus fare was simply unthinkable. It just wouldn't even remotely appear on the radar. So it would often depend on where you were, the socioeconomic mix and things like that, for those sorts of things to occur. And I'm not talking about mafia-type violence here, but just generally in the population. So where did I notice... and this surprised me as a kid. Well, it surprised me. Something I noticed and thought it was odd as a kid was pretty much every punch-up I ever saw was where a woman thought she'd been disrespected by a man, and she may have even provoked the confrontation, but would then say, "Oh yeah, you better respect me, or I'm going to get my man to beat you up." Oh yeah. And it would sort of come from that. And there have been many deaths as a result of this sort of thing. There's one a little while ago in a very working class suburb of Sydney where some guy was like mowing his lawn, and the woman next door said, "Look, I've got a headache, so you have to stop mowing the lawn." He said no, he was going to mow it. They started calling each other names. Then she goes, "Oh yeah, well, I'm going to have the last word here. I'm going to get my man to beat you up." And so she rustles up her, she's like a single mother, and she finds some guy to call and show me what a big, strong man you are. Go and beat this guy up for me. So he turns up, and they have a big punch up, and it turns out the guy dies, or he falls over, hits his head on something, and dies. Then the boyfriend is arrested for murder, and she gets arrested for setting the whole thing up, and so a bit of a disaster all around. But this is very much the reflex action, and the lower down the further down the vulgarity sort of scales, the more likely those things would have happened. But pretty much every punch I've ever saw, I remember as a kid, I was probably 12 or 13 at the time, but there was I was in a grocery store getting milk or something or other, and some guy's talking to, I don't know, his girlfriend or his wife or whatever, and he comes around the corner of the grocery store aisle, bumps into another woman sort of walking towards him. I mean, he apologized. "Oh, sorry about that, excuse me." And did sort of the polite thing, but her husband was there, and he looked and came across as a very angry man, already angry even before this happened. So, and in that very working class sort of voice, you hurt my wife, and that's a very Australian sort of street vulgar talk. Wife, that type of thing. So, next thing you know, they're having a punch up. And he probably picked the angry guy, probably picked the wrong one. The other dude was pretty fit, and so they were swinging away there. But over what? What was exactly? I'm standing up and protecting the honour of my wife, but there was no causation for a drama like that. And it got to a point where, the police were called, they were both dragged off, and it was unpleasantness all around. But this was a very much a thing. And also fathers were very much there to teach the sons, you better respect women, but it wasn't about the respecting the woman. It was, I'm the big, tough, He-Man, hairy-chested, fucking heavy dude protector of women, and that's my sense of self-worth. I'm the big protector. And I remember, parents, more, well, probably nearly always women, as I recall, would say, I remember this one woman would telling her son, who was, by the way, a weedy little thing, who couldn't have punched his way out of a paper bag, saying, if anybody at anyone at school sort of says anything negative about me or anything, disrespects me, this is among the kids' school, you have to beat them up for me, says the mother. So it was being encouraged at all levels. And I was I was at some kids' play, like a buddy's place, and the mother was waffling on some bullshit, and the kid said, it would have been probably again 12, 13, something like that. The kid said, Mum, that's really dumb or stupid, or something like that. And straight away the father was over, donging the kid on the head. How dare you disrespect your mother? This sort of thing. Now, it created an artificial sense. It had the opposite. I think it ended up having the opposite effect. As far as I could tell, the families where, you beat everyone up for me. You show, anyone disrespecting, you kick the shit out of them for me, this sort of thing. It was done. And I think it had the opposite effect. I think the boys, when they did grow up to be men, or even young men, remembered that and thought that's crazy. And it was always, as I recall, the women who misbehaved the most, who were the most difficult to get on with, bipolar or something, who were demanding that some big strong man, you have to beat him up for me. And this was a constant thing. Now, when police did arrive, and I was an observer of some situation, I don't know. I just went out the back and had a cigarette. I have no idea what you're talking about. No, nothing to do with me. When people were being set off. I even remember being in sort of, what in Australia are called RSL clubs, returned servicemen leagues, and they were quite big. There's still some around actually, but they were huge back in the day when I was a young man. If a woman was because you had men's lounges and women's lounges and family lounges, it's all separated off. And if a woman was walking nearby, there would be always some man say, "There's a woman here! Stop your bad language!" And if some guy was still saying, coming out with profanity, there'd be a few guys would turn up, showing their big toughness to stand up for the woman. And the owner would say, well, we'll come and beat you up. Yeah, I'll take you back and give you a fist beating, you profane motherfucker. Didn't you see the woman walking through? And that was the sort of thing back then. This is when I was a kid and a young man. So what's changed today? Well, the causation factors have actually stayed the same. The difference now is instead of in the better behaved class, at least, instead of getting, I'm going to get my man to beat you up. Now it would be, I'm going to call the government on you. I'm going to say you're a misogynist Nazi, and I'm going to get them to debank you and make sure you don't have a job, and make sure your bank account is emptied, and make sure you go to respect courses or courses on white supremacy Nazis or something. So I wonder what the difference is. If the guy had supposedly committed some sort of offence, in the 1980s, 70s, or 80s or something, happened to be a seriously fit karate expert, then nobody would want to go and show him. I remember one thing looking at, there was a woman she was working in, I think, some takeout food shop or something like that, and she started giving this guy a hard time. I was maybe, I don't know, 7 years old, 8 years old, and calling him names. He called her names back. And as soon as he called her a name back, that's it, I'm going to get my man to beat you up. And sure enough, she goes running around. I don't know, she found some guy, and the guy that she picked the fight with was this dweeby little fuck. Yeah. And then she gets her man, who was pretty solid sort of dude, came along. Yeah, will you read to my woman? And then he threw a couple of punches and knocked this dweeby little guy down. He was sort of quite dazed and bewildered by it all, you know. Well, she called me names first, you know. But that's kind of how it was then. But I'd like to know what's changed, because it maintains a certain victim status and mentality. So whilst the victim status, and there has to be some big tough, you know, I'll sort you out, you know, you better be, you know, you better show me respect, or I'll get my man to beat you up, or I'll get the government to come and beat you up. But what exactly has changed? Instead of I'll get my man to do it, it's now I'll get the government to do it. And is this not a regressive step in the overall scheme of things? I would argue it is. I thought, you know, here, I used to call them hero guys, still do. I thought hero guys were as pathetic as fuck. And I had a few of them come, yeah, you were rude to my woman. Yeah, well, fuck you. And then try and headbutt them or something like that. So I always had a dim view of people like that. Oh, you piss weak fuck. You know, the misguided sort of nature of I'm only a real person because I'm standing up for the obscure honor of another. You know, I couldn't get it then, and I still don't get it today. So, but is this a regressive step? Because now, instead of that being silliness amongst the populace, it's now turned into official government policy, and men are the baddies, you know, and women are the victims. And is this not just a wider furtherance of the Marxist dialectic? I think it is, and I think it's a regressive step for society. You've been with Tacitus today, your Pushback channel, and thank you for listening.